Hello, everyone. Welcome to Speak podcast today. Well, today we're diving straight into something really fascinating and honestly, pretty critical.
Yeah, that ongoing AI competition, specifically between the U.S. and China.
Exactly. And it feels like it was brought into really sharp focus just recently, by those remarks from NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang.
Right, at the Hill and Valley Forum in D.C., What he said was quite insightful, I thought.
It really was, because he didn't frame it as just, who's got the slightly faster computer chips right now.
No, not at all. He used this specific phrase, an infinite race. That's the key here. It's not some short sprint where someone just wins.
An infinite race. I like that. So forget about a quick victory lap.
It's more like a marathon, maybe one without a defined finish line. The real focus is on endurance, constantly improving, building strength over the long haul.
Exactly. Continuous improvement.
Yeah.
So to really help you get a handle on what this means, we've really dug into Huang's statements from the forum.
And we've paired that with a pretty deep analysis of the whole U.S. China AI scene. We're talking the tech details, the strategy.
The strategic implications, the whole picture. Think of this as like your shortcut to understanding this really complex dynamic.
Yeah.
It's about global power, really.
Right. So our mission for you today is basically to unpack Huang's main points, look at the actual evidence behind his assessment, especially on China's capabilities.
And really try to grasp what this infinite race idea actually means for the future of technology, for global power structures.
And we found some things that might surprise you, actually, some facts and insights that could challenge, some common assumptions about who's supposedly ahead.
Or even what ahead means in this whole thing.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's get into it. Huang's big point seemed to be that China is a major AI power, like definitely not behind the U.S. What did the sources say about that?
Yeah, that was striking. He directly challenged that common narrative, the one that says China's significantly lagging. He even pointed to Huawei.
Huawei.
Called them, I think the quote was, one of the world's most formidable technology companies. And he stressed the tremendous progress they've made.
In what specifically?
In the core stuff that drives AI. Computing power, networking, software, the fundamentals. And remember, this is coming from the CEO of NVIDIA?
Yeah, the company at the absolute heart of AI hardware right now. That's not just a casual comment.
Not at all. And it seems like the broader analysis we looked at kind of backs this up, doesn't it? It suggests the picture is way more complex than just U.S. leads, China follows.
It really does, when you look at the different ways to measure this stuff.
Right. Take AI research papers, for instance. Just the sheer volume. China actually surpassed the U.S. quite a while ago.
Really? By how much?
Well, by 2021, something like nearly 40% of all global AI publications were coming out of China. That volume, it's not just numbers on a page.
No, it points to something bigger.
It points to a massive and rapidly growing pool of researchers, a huge national focus on just generating AI knowledge. That has serious long-term implications for how fast they can innovate.
Okay, wow, 40% is huge. But, the question always comes up, is it just quantity? What about the quality, the impact of that research?
That's a fair question and definitely part of the nuance. For a while, the perception was, lots of papers, but maybe not as much originality or high impact.
Okay.
But the newer data suggests China's catching up fast on quality, too, measured by things like highly cited papers. Some studies even suggest they passed the U.S. in the top 10% most cited papers around 2019.
Around 2019. That's a significant shift then.
It is. It really changes the narrative. So, the U.S. might still lead in some areas of research influence, but China is undeniably a powerhouse in creating AI knowledge.
Okay, clear shift.
Yeah.
Now let's circle back to Huang's infinite race idea. What does that actually mean for you, the listener, in practice? How is it different from just, normal competition?
Well, the core difference is the goal, right? Think of a finite game like basketball. There are rules, a time limit, a clear winner and loser. The goal is to win.
Right. End of the game, someone holds the trophy.
Exactly. But an infinite game like business competition or AI development, in this view, it doesn't have a fixed endpoint. There's no final whistle.
So the goal isn't really to win in that sense.
No. The goal is to keep playing, to sustain your participation, to continuously build your capabilities so you can keep playing effectively. It's about staying power.
Okay, so it's less about trying to land a knockout blow on China next year or even in 5 years.
And much more about making sure the U.S. has the foundational strength, the innovation engine, the resilience to compete consistently over decades.
Got it. Long haul thinking.
Precisely. And Huang pointed out China has, I think he said, a strong will and tremendous technological capability. He also noted how many AI researchers actually come from China originally.
Right, the talent pipeline.
Yeah, highlighting their inherent strength there. It just reinforces this idea that it's not a short-term thing. Understanding this long game is, well, it's crucial for you.
So if you adopt this infinite race view, like Huang suggests, how does that change what the U.S. should be doing? He wasn't just saying restrict China more, was he?
No, not entirely. What was interesting was his push to focus on accelerating the spread of U.S. AI technology globally. That was his angle.
Accelerating the spread. How does that work if you're also competing?
Well, he hinted that maybe rethinking some export controls could actually help U.S. companies in the long run, let them capture future opportunities, build global ecosystems around U.S. tech.
Interesting. So less about just blocking, more about promoting your own stuff.
Kind of.
Yeah.
And he also welcomed the U.S. government's efforts to bring manufacturing back, chips, AI supercomputers. He sees that as vital.
Why vital?
To meet the absolutely massive demand for AI infrastructure that's coming, and also, to make supply chains more resilient. It felt like a strategy focused on building up U.S. strengths, not just trying to trip up a rival.
Boost U.S. capability, boost U.S. reach. Makes sense. Okay, now, to really get this competition and where NVIDIA fits, we need to understand the building blocks. The analysis laid out the AI tech stack pretty clearly. Can you walk us through that?
Sure. You can think of it broadly in 3 layers. At the bottom, you got the hardware, the physical foundation.
The chips.
Exactly. High-performance processors, especially GPUs, graphics processing units. And this layer, well, this is where NVIDIA is just dominant.
How dominant?
Over 80% market share in the chips used for AI. That's huge. It's largely down to their GPUs like the A100, the Hopper series, and critically, their CUDA software platform that ties it all together.
Right, CUDA.
These aren't just chips. They're incredibly complex systems, absolutely essential for training the huge AI models and then running them efficiently. They're basically the engines of AI.
Okay, so NVIDIA rules the hardware layer.
Yeah.
What sits on top of that?
That's the software and models layer. This is where you find the algorithms, the programming frameworks everyone uses, like TensorFlow, PyTorch.
The tools developers use.
Exactly. And also the pre-trained models themselves. Think large language models like ChatGPT. These are like the instruction sets, the preloaded knowledge that the AI uses.
And this layer's evolving fast too, right?
Oh, incredibly fast. We've gone from AI that could just do basic perception to generative AI, creating text and images. And now we're moving towards what some call agentic AI.
Agentic AI, what's that?
AI that can perceive, understand, reason, plan, and then actually act in the world. It requires orders of magnitude more computing power.
Wow, and NVIDIA's role here isn't just hardware.
No, that's key. They provide tons of software tools, libraries, even pre-trained models. They've built this whole ecosystem that developers get locked into, in a way. It reinforces their hardware dominance.
Okay, hardware, software models, and the top layer.
Applications. That's where AI actually touches your life, where it gets applied in different industries.
Like self-driving cars?
Self-driving cars, medical diagnosis, drug discovery, scientific research, creating content. The list is almost endless. It's impacting pretty much every part of modern life.
Now, Huang also talked about AI factories. That term really stood out. What are those?
Yeah, that's a really powerful concept he's pushing. He doesn't just mean data centers. He sees them as, like, production systems for intelligence.
Production systems for intelligence.
Think of it this way. They take raw inputs, electricity and data, and they manufacture tokens. Tokens are basic units AI deals with, like words for an LLM.
Okay.
So the goal of an AI factory, in his view, is to maximize the output tokens per second while minimizing the input cost, primarily electricity per watt. It's about the efficiency of producing intelligence.
Tokens per second per watt.
Exactly. And he believes this is going to become a whole new industry, as fundamental as electricity generation was back in the day.
That's a huge claim. As vital as power plants.
That's the comparison he draws. And it makes you think, right? If AI factories become that critical, could nations start competing for AI factory capacity like they used to fight over oil?
That's a provocative thought. A future built on producing and consuming intelligence tokens.
Mind-bending, isn't it? And it feeds directly into his other big idea, physical AI.
Right. Physical AI. What's the vision there?
This is what he sees as the next major wave. AI that doesn't just live in the digital world, but understands and interacts with the physical world.
Robots, basically.
Robots, yes, but also autonomous vehicles, smart factories, smart spaces. AI that can perceive the real world, understand physics, and perform complex tasks out here with us.
How do you teach an AI physics, though?
That's the challenge. And NVIDIA's answer, a big part of it, is their Omniverse platform.
Omniverse.
It lets you create incredibly realistic physical simulations, digital twins of factories, cities, robots. You can then generate massive amounts of synthetic data within these simulations to train the AI.
So you train the AI in a virtual world before letting it loose in the real one.
Exactly. Using techniques like reinforcement learning, basically trial and error with rewards in the simulation. It's much faster and safer than trying to train a robot purely in the real world. Huang actually predicted a ChatGPT moment for general-purpose robots isn't far off.
Wow. So NVIDIA is aiming to provide the tools for the AI factories and for training this physical AI. They're positioning themselves across the whole stack.
Absolutely. It's a very comprehensive strategy.
Okay, let's bring it back to the U.S. China race. The analysis we looked at used various metrics, and it painted, well, a messy picture. You called it the indicator dilemma.
Yeah, because depending on what you measure, you get a different story, right?
So where does the U.S. seem to lead?
Clear advantages in private investment going into AI startups. Also in developing the most advanced foundational AI models, the really big ones. And the sheer number of data centers currently operational. The U.S. has far more.
Okay, investment, top models, data centers, U.S. lead.
But then you look elsewhere. China, as we said, dominates in the volume of AI research papers. They also lead significantly in the number of AI patents being granted.
Patents, okay. What else?
They're catching up fast, maybe even leading now in some measures, on highly cited research, as we mentioned. And Talent Origin China is now the world's largest source of people going into AI research.
Even though many still prefer to work in the U.S.
Right, the U.S. is still a magnet for top global talent, but the pipeline starts heavily in China now. And maybe the most surprising one for some, overall technology adoption rates seem higher in China.
Higher adoption, meaning they actually use the AI tech more broadly.
It seems that way based on several indicators. So you see the dilemma: investment leader versus patent leader, top model developer versus top paper publisher, preferred work destination versus largest talent source, leading innovator versus potentially faster adopter.
Yeah, it's definitely not a simple scoreboard. Strengths and weaknesses on both sides. Which brings us back to Huang's infinite race idea and how to think about strategy. You mentioned Simon Sinek's work on this framework.
Yes, Sinek's infinite game concept provides a useful lens here. It contrasts with a finite game where the goal is simply to win.
Right, like we discussed.
In an infinite game, the primary objective is to continue playing, to perpetuate the game. And to do that effectively, organizations need certain things.
Like what?
Sinek outlines 5 key elements: having a just cause, a compelling, inspiring long-term vision that motivates people, building trusting teams where people feel safe and collaborative, learning from worthy rivals.
Like seeing China not just as an adversary, but someone to learn from.
Exactly. Recognizing their strengths and adapting. Which leads to the next one. Existential flexibility, the ability to make profound strategic shifts to advance your just cause when needed. And finally, demonstrating the courage to lead, making bold choices based on the long-term vision, not just short-term gains.
Okay, so if you apply that framework to the U.S. in the AI race,
Yeah.
what would the just cause be? It can't just be beat China, right?
Probably not. If you want it to be truly motivating and sustainable long-term, it might be something more like ensuring AI is developed and deployed responsibly to benefit humanity, or advancing scientific discovery, or empowering individuals through technology, a bigger purpose.
And thinking this way changes how you approach the competition.
It suggests that a strategy focused solely on short-term wins or just hindering China might be, well, playing the wrong game. The infinite mindset pushes towards building that resilient domestic ecosystem Huang talked about.
Fostering trust, collaboration.
Learning from China's successes, like their rapid adoption rates, being flexible, and pursuing that bigger long-term vision for U.S. leadership in AI. It really aligns with Huang's points about strengthening U.S. infrastructure, talent, and global tech spread.
It feels like a shift from a win at all costs, maybe zero-sum mentality,
towards a focus on sustained excellence, resilience, and maybe even positive contribution. How do you stay strong and keep advancing your cause indefinitely?
Right. Now, our analysis didn't just focus on algorithms and chips. It also highlighted some really critical dependencies for this whole AI revolution, things we might overlook.
Absolutely essential things. We flagged 3 big ones: energy, talent, and technology adoption.
Let's start with energy. Why is that so critical?
Because the energy demands are just staggering. Training these huge AI models takes enormous amounts of power. running the vast data centers, the AI factories, consumes electricity on an industrial scale.
And it's only going to increase, presumably.
Exponentially, it seems. So both the U.S. and China face this massive challenge. How do you provide enough reliable and ideally sustainable energy to power this AI boom? It becomes a fundamental infrastructural bottleneck.
So the race isn't just in AI tech, it's in securing the power for it. What about the second dependency, talent?
Talent is another huge one. We talked about researchers, China being a major source, the U.S. being a destination.
Right.
But it's not just about the PhDs designing algorithms. The U.S. in particular seems to be facing a potentially serious shortage of skilled technical workers.
You mean like electricians, plumbers?
Exactly. The people needed to actually build and maintain the physical infrastructure, the data centers, the cooling systems, the power grid supporting them. You can design the best AI chip in the world, but if you don't have enough skilled electricians to wire the data center,
hit a wall. That's a really interesting point, the skilled trades gap as an AI bottleneck.
it could be a significant constraint. You need the whole talent ecosystem, not just the scientists.
Okay, energy talent. And the third dependency was technology adoption.
Right. How quickly and widely do these AI innovations actually get put to use in the real economy? Inventing something is step one.
But actually using it to boost productivity or create new services, that's step two.
Precisely. And realizing the benefits depends entirely on step two. And here, as we touched on, there's this interesting potential gap.
The U.S. leads in innovation, but China leads in adoption.
It's a bit of a generalization, but some data points in that direction. The U.S. is clearly pioneering many foundational models and cutting-edge applications, but China often seems faster at deploying AI solutions at scale across various sectors.
Why might that be?
Various potential reasons, maybe fewer legacy systems to integrate with, different data privacy regulations, strong government pushes for adoption in certain industries. It's complex, but the U.S. does seem to face hurdles in getting innovations broadly implemented sometimes.
So this innovation lead, adoption lag, for the U.S., that could actually hinder its ability to get the full economic payoff from AI in the long run, even if they invent it first.
That's the potential risk, yes. If you invent it, but your rival deploys it faster and more widely, who ultimately benefits more? It complicates the who's ahead question even further for you.
Okay, this has been incredibly insightful. Let's try to pull together the main threads for everyone listening. Key takeaways from this deep dive today for you.
Well, first, Jensen Huang's core point. China is a serious AI power, absolutely not lagging, with companies like Huawei showing major progress. That's crucial context.
Right. And his framing. Now, this is infinite race. Think long-term capability, not short-term wins.
Then we unpacked the AI, tech stack, hardware, software models, applications, and saw NVIDIA's really central role, especially with concepts like AI factories churning out tokens.
In the coming wave of physical AI, trained using simulations like Omniverse.
We also wrestled with that indicator dilemma, how the U.S. might lead on investment in top models, but China leads on paper, volume, patents, maybe even adoption. It's not a simple picture.
No easy answers there. And we highlighted those critical dependencies. The immense need for energy, the full spectrum of talent, including technical workers, and the crucial factor of technology adoption speed.
And finally, we looked at that infinite game framework, suggesting maybe the U.S. focus should be on its just cause, building trust, learning from rivals like China, being flexible, and showing the courage to lead for the long haul.
It really shifts the perspective on strategy.
Absolutely. It's a complex, dynamic competition, and Huang's viewpoint gives us a really valuable way to think about its long-term nature.
This has been, a really fascinating journey into just how complex this U.S. China AI dynamic is. It really underscores that there are no simple answers, and things are changing constantly.
They really are.
Thinking about those AI factories, if they really do become as fundamental as power plants, what does that do to geopolitics? What new dependencies pop up? What new opportunities?
It's a profound shift to consider.
It really makes you think about the kind of long-term strategies needed, not just to compete, but, well, to thrive in this infinite race we've been talking about. Something for you to ponder.
Indeed. It's a paradigm shift we'll definitely be keeping a close eye on.
Thank you for joining us. See you next time.